In this video, we're going to look at the top 5 most common questions that are asked in barista interviews, and we're going to help you plan fantastic answers that will get you a job working as a barista. So let's look at a question that every single barista is going to be asked in their interview, which is, what hours can you work? And there are 3 things you got to do to be successful in this question. The first thing is, don't bother lying. If you can't work certain times, there's no point saying you can, because if you accept the job on the basis that you can work those times and then go back and say that you can't, you're going to lose your contract. So don't bother with that. On the other hand, to be very successful, you have to show that, one, you're super flexible and you're going to be there when they need you. And you also need to show that you're committed to the job. So if you immediately go into this question like most people and you start talking about all the times you can do, you're not going to be successful. You want to just only focus on talking about the times that you can do. And that's one of the ways that's going to show your commitment. If you talk about all the times you can't do, you're creating a problem for the cafe that's going to be hiring you, and they're just not going to bother. There are certain things that they would really like you to say. So cafe owners really want to hear that you can be there at opening time. Some of the stores open at extremely early times, perhaps even 5:30, that you may need to be in for. So if you can work at those times, that's great. If you can work in evenings, so that towards the end of the opening times, that's great. If you don't have children or can manage to work school breaks, that's a fantastic time to be able to work. If you can't, don't mention it. It'll probably not come up. But if you can volunteer that as a piece of information, and if you're happy to work at short notice, that's also great, because it's difficult to keep stores continuously staffed. So if you can be there at short notice, they are really interested to hear that. So this number one tip to be successful on this is can do only. So only ever talk about the things you can do. And once you've talked about all the things you can do, they're probably going to move on and not even know that there's certain times you can't work. There's no point volunteering negative information. So stick to this and you'll be successful in this question. Let's look at the second question. How would you deal with an upset customer? It happens all the time in all forms of retail. And there's 4 things you're going to have to mention to be successful. The key word that will get you success on this question is de-escalation. If you use the word de-escalation, that's a fantastic way to start the question. So de-escalation means calming everyone down and getting the situation under control. The next thing I'm going to mention is that you're going to show empathy. You're going to be listening, because often angry and upset customers just want to feel like they're being listened to. You're also going to make sure that you know the company's policies. If you don't know the company's policies, you may offer things that, like free discounts and free products, that is not actually authorized. So you're going to know exactly what you have authority to do, and you're going to follow that at all times. And the fundamental thing is, you're going to find a resolution. You're going to find what the customer's problem is, why they're upset, and you're going to find a satisfactory resolution that's going to make sure that customer has a good experience. And so if you get those 4 things in your answer, you're going to reassure them that you know what to do and that you're going to be following the appropriate policies. So stick to that and you will be successful in this question. Let's look at question 3. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And this can be a negative screening question, so you've got to be careful, because you can lose the interview on this. So let's look at what a good interview answer looks like. So you're focusing at store level. You don't want to immediately be going above that, because the person hiring you is hiring you to work at the store level. Focus on your performance. So talk about being an absolutely amazing barista, which is really what they want fundamentally. And also make it extremely clear that in 5 years' time, you want to stay in the industry. Otherwise, it's going to possibly screen you out. Some good things to mention is taking on a little bit more responsibility. You might talk about the road to +1. So still working as a barista, but also taking on some assistant manager responsibilities in 5 years' time. If you're not interested in extra responsibility, that's absolutely fine. But what you want to say is that you're going to be an outstanding barista. So you're looking in 5 years' time to be absolutely amazing. So think about where you are now, and it might be a very high level, but think about a few things that you could do to be absolutely amazing. So perfecting latte art, maybe competing in competitions, doing something that makes you really stand out in that profession. We should also mention what a bad answer looks like, so you know what not to say. So not working as a barista is an absolute disaster. If you say that it's just a temporary job, they're going to give it to someone who's more committed. Anything that's a bit ridiculous, going from barista to a senior manager at Starbucks, not particularly plausible in the 5-year time plan. If you can't really come up with an answer, it's a bit worrying. If you've not really got a plan, it maybe looks like you're trying to hide the fact that you're going to leave the industry. And really, if you say anything that just doesn't meet the cafe's needs, particularly moving elsewhere, they're going to lose interest in you. So focus on the positive side, don't mention the negative side, and you're really looking to survive this question rather than so much as stand out. This can be used as negative screening for people who they don't want to hire because they're likely not committed. So let's move on and look at the fourth question, which is, what does a barista do? And surprisingly, this question can be answered poorly because people don't seem to know the entire job role, and it can be quite a lot. So I've got some key things to mention. So basically, if you mention all these things, you're covering the majority of the job. So you're looking at serving customers, maintaining the serving area, so making sure that is clean, tidy, and well presented. You're sanitizing items to maintain cleanliness and hygiene standards. You're cleaning the areas where customers are eating quite often. You're providing advice to customers. Customers are going to ask you about the product. So you're going to say in your interview that you're going to make sure that you know all of the products that are offered and you've already got some knowledge and experience of coffee, for example. And you're going to make sure that you're going to be able to answer any questions that they've got. Another thing that a lot of people miss out on is that there can be some mentoring opportunities. So when new hires are taken on, you can be involved in buddying with them and showing them the job. A top tip in this question and in general in your interview is, before you go to the interview, make sure that you can do latte art. And if you can't do that, learn it, look on YouTube, see exactly how it works and practice doing it. Because if you can mention that you have got that skill, that means that there's less training required for you, and it's more likely that they'll employ you because you're slightly easier to take on. Let's move it on to question 5 before we look at some questions that you could be asking them. And the question is, what would you do if you were late for a shift? And people answer this really, really badly, and you've got to be careful with this one. So a bad answer would be to say that I would apologize. That's the first thing that people come out with. They apologize for being late. They might volunteer, say I'd make up the time, I'd leave a little bit later, I wouldn't claim those hours. And if you answer any of these ways, it suggests that you're not actually bothered about being late. They want to see people who are horrified at the idea of being late, because this tells you a lot as an employer. Your answer to this is really revealing. If you don't show concern about being late, you probably aren't concerned about being late. A good answer just has a kind of horrified reaction. It's like, I'm never late. I wouldn't be late. Why? It's awful being late. It causes so much trouble and disruption that being late is just not acceptable. Then you want to go in and show some track record of reliability. Say, I've worked in this industry for a long time and I have a very good track record of reliability. I can give you the contact details of my previous manager and you can speak to them and they will back up the fact that I'm never late. And then to finish the question, so you're actually answering it directly, you can talk about mitigation. So say there may be extreme circumstances where, for example, I'm on the train and all trains out of a particular station are cancelled for hours. There could be extreme circumstances where I could be late. In the event of that, my priority is to make sure that the management team there are informed as soon as possible so that appropriate mitigation can be put in place. And where I am late, I would never claim for any hours that I have not actually worked. And if you do that, they're going to be happy with your answer. So make sure you only talk about actually being late in extreme circumstances and show a kind of horror and disgust at lateness, and they'll be happy with your answer. So let's look at a bonus. Here's some questions that you could ask them. I've given you quite a few suggestions, so I would read through these and see which ones you feel most comfortable with. One question that's a little bit cheeky, but is quite a good question to ask, is how would you describe an outstanding barista? And you can sit back, listen to them give an answer, and then input a few things about how you actually meet that and agree with them, and then reference some of your own skills and experience. It's a great way to end the interview by just reminding them of how great you are. And that can help in the hiring decision. And the last thing is, make sure you definitely ask one question based on something that's come up in the interview. If you don't, it shows you're not listening. You must have something dynamic that doesn't look like it's prepared. So best of luck in your barista interview, and thank you very much for watching.